needed to prevent future damage.
It is unacceptable, outrageous and self-defeating to put it on the back burner. Indeed, many of today's conflicts are linked with growing climate chaos.
Last-minute efforts are being made in the US to get the backing of voters in the midterm elections. Americans head to the polls tomorrow in an election that will determine the economic, political and social direction of the country in the coming years. Former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer told The Hard Shoulder here on News Talk, people on both sides of the political divide believe in some crazy stuff.
There's an obsession with folks in the media to focus entirely on people on the right that believes in things. There's a bunch of people on the left that believe in a ton of nutty stuff, and yet you guys never ask them about their crazies in their party. There's no monopoly on one party having nutty people in their party.
And Instagram is introducing new age verification technology from today. Users attempting to change their age above or below 18 on the app will be asked to show photo ID and record a video selfie, which will then be analysed by age estimation technology. The new update comes off the back of a series of online child safety campaigns. And that's it for now. More at 8.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Seen one grotto, seen them all. Visit Christmas markets in Berlin, Prague or Vienna instead.
Clear spells and scattered showers tonight, some turning heavy or thundery, lows of 6 to 9 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo.
This is News Talk.
Now, hello there. So Saturday, I think it's fair to say, Lansdowne Road delivered on the pre-match hype. We have star-studded lineup: Jerry Thornley, Andy Dunn in studio together. Monday Night Rugby on the way after 8 o'clock. We have Pat Nevin on the weekend's football. Plus, it seems FSG has put Liverpool up for sale. The always brilliant Matt Slater will explain all this hour. He's going to join us just after the news round. 53106, the text number. We are at Off the Ball on Twitter. Michael McCarthy, hello to you.
Hello, TV's Joe Molloy.
And Richie McCormack, hello to you.
Evening, gents.
I don't know if you heard Richie's commentary yesterday on Manchester United Aston Villa, Mick. Because no one else did.
There's a good 20 minutes there, Joe, to be fair.
Sorry.
We got the United goal in.
There were 20 minutes, but we missed all of the Aston Villa goals.
Got the United goal. That really told the story of the game, Richie.
Yeah. Gremlins in the system.
It did, yeah. 100%. Well, in a way, depending on what way you look at the match, there is a tale to be told by those 20 minutes. Now, I'm not one to go into it here. That's for other people to do. But regardless, it was a fantastic first outing for Unai Emery. So I believe, in charge of Aston Villa.
It sure was. Andy Dunn making a welcome return to the Off the Ball studio. URC, he takes or leaves it. Ireland beating the world champions, he'll come in for that. Jerry Thornley alongside him. That's on the way after 8 o'clock. We've spoken to the lads already. It's a great piece, loads of great stuff in it. The physicality of the game.
Ooh, Joe.
I mean, Tadhg looked like he'd gone 15 rounds as he walked off. I think none of us are quite revelling with the same carefree abandon in that physicality anymore when it comes to rugby, but it was most certainly an aspect of the game.
Do you know, that's very true, actually. Yeah, there is that element of, like, both teams are up for this and it's a hard-hitting bastard of a game, for want of a better word. You know, that there's a feeling in that's a very specific type of rugby that's never going to be high-scoring or anything like that, but the attrition is the spectacle.
Johnny Sexton called it a test match.
It's a proper test match. I don't know why he became English there all of a sudden, but that expression certainly would be. Yeah. Or as Kieran Reid used to say after in his post-match interviews, hill of a test match. Both Kieran Reid and Josh van der Fleer, two men who smile at all times when they're talking, regardless of the content. Okay. Although Josh van der Fleer has a lot to smile about lately. Oh yeah, what a player he is. Like, do you know what? Actually, this is going completely sideways. But what, like, Josh van der Fleer, I think I might have talked about this after in the summer after New Zealand. But Josh van der Fleer is the most incredible storyline of a player, of the unexpected hero,
I know,
that I think you'll ever get. Always respected, always a good player, always the guy who will do a job for you for Ireland, to, I would say, being in the top 4 or 5 most important players in that team now, in a team that's number 1 ranked in the world. And we're not getting into whether they'll win the World Cup or not, but realistic contenders for a World Cup.
Player of the season last year,
right?
European player of the year last season. Even chatting with Rob Kearney, we were on air obviously afterwards, and pre-game we had an interview with Josh van der Fleer, and we asked him if he had anticipated Van der Fleer becoming what he is today, age 29, and even Carney said, no, you couldn't really have foreseen this, particularly the physical aspect, the transformation to that degree.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable, and I mean...
He got singled out pre-match as well in the press conferences. I think it was the press conference to Knee Neighbour. It was one of the Knee Neighbour press conferences last week. And Van der Fleer's name was, from a South African journalist, was put out there as being one of the players that they would have to curtail and curb and try and look out for, because he was one of the threats that at least the South Africans knew was coming on Saturday night. So his reputation is certainly not just Leinster-based, it's worldwide now at this stage, and it will be more so, I guess, after Saturday.
To go back to the attritional point, though, it's funny because, as I said, like, that is a virtue of the game. It's something that it's a specific type of game that I think is incredible when rugby is at its best and two teams meet in that way that is well matched. But you're right, you're watching it in a completely different way. Every time there is a hit, you wait a second almost for your brain to register what part of the body it was in before you allow yourself to enjoy it or to celebrate it. You know, there wasn't too many... Nothing that I can really remember that was kind of like looked dangerous in a head specific way.
Well, I thought that was
maybe the Colby tackle, but you know.
Well, yeah, that was probably should have been red, I think. But that was the interesting thing. It was so attritional. There were so many injuries, and yet there was no clear cut head hit, and it made me think. Well, maybe they're starting to get the hang of how rugby can be played in the most committed fashion without taking each other's heads off. Now, it's one game, small sample size.
Ireland lost 3 or 4 players during the game, but again, none of them were of that sort of...
Like, muscle injuries and
they weren't
rolled ankle.
Colliding sort of injuries. Yeah, so I don't know. Like, I mean, if we can get to that point, where you can trust players and coaches to coach these players to have these types of games that don't include clashes of heads or shoulders to the heads or, you know, shoulders onto the head or back of the neck in rucks, I think we could maybe get back to the point where a game like Saturday's is something that we can enjoy and celebrate as an incredible test, as Johnny Sexton called it.
No, you would hope so. Though the nagging voice at the back of your head on that front says, well, great to get rid of those high-profile, very glaring head hits. It's more the subconcussive whiplash effects and what damage they do over 10 years. So who knows? Sorry, that is just an aspect of watching these more gladiatorial games now. So Ireland to win the World Cup, Richie, that's generally what we're saying, I think.
Yeah, I think it's nailed on now at this stage. I don't think there's anything standing in our way to win a World Cup. This is fait accompli, and basically turning up in France in a year's time or 11 months' time is a box ticking exercise. But no, it's only when you go back and you beat them, and then you kind of figure that they're going to spend a year redoubling their efforts in a similar way to, and I know Rory pointed this out last night, but it certainly, or yesterday on the show, but certainly something to look out for, is that the New Zealand 15 on Friday night had figured out a way to stymie the Irish style of play. And other teams will do that. And Ireland will find a way around it, and they'll dance around it, and they'll have tactics to counter it and all that kind of stuff. But there is a year, and there's, 6 more games essentially of high profile to come between now and then. Like, we are in danger of being found out. And that happens to any team. And we've got an absolute dog of a draw as well. Like, when you have the Springboks in your group, you have a potential France or All Blacks quarter final. That's ugly. Like, that's really ugly in terms of what's in front of us.
It is. So in a way,
with all that in mind, nothing will be taken for granted by that group.
True.
And you saw the lack of celebration as well on Saturday. This wasn't a case of we finally gotten over the line. It's like, okay, that's a win. Let's move on to Fiji, and that's pretty much what you want from the side.
In a way, assuming Scotland don't beat the Springboks and Ireland beat Scotland, the game against South Africa is almost irrelevant. Because you can't predict who's going to win between France and New Zealand next year. So you don't know who you're beating the South Africans to play.
That game will happen first, though, won't it? It's the opener,
maybe it will.
I think. So, but even so, we don't know what's going to be awaiting us, be it France or New Zealand. Pick your poison. So that, it's so far away. I know we have to kind of worry about that, and it's always going to be semi-final or bust, whereas actually it should be Ireland happen to have never got past the quarter-final, but this is a tournament they should be winning, or at least competing to win. And it might just so happen that the final could be played in the quarter-final. That is a possibility here. We have to get our heads around that. We're on the wrong side of the draw. But I think we have to stop looking at it negatively, because there's no reason that Ireland can't evolve in the next 12 months. There's no reason that Ireland can't be learning lessons from these games the same way as South Africa and New Zealand will. We have to start trusting that this is an incredible group of professionals with a really good coaching team that won't be resting on their laurels for the next 12 months and hoping that Johnny Sexton doesn't get too old. What they did on Saturday was a new kind of win. Johnny Sexton said they might have had the guts to do it in the past, which I thought was an interesting line, but it could be just something that Johnny says straight after a game when he's liable to kind of say anything, in fairness. But what they did was, they answered what South Africa gave to them and found a way to win the game. If South Africa had a better kicker, if they had a better 10 on the day, would they have won the game? I'm not so sure, because it felt to me like Ireland were answering the questions. Now, it could have been a high scoring game, it could have been a slightly different style. But I just feel that there's something about this team that seems to know how to win close games
at the moment,
and that's massive. And maybe it disappears in 12 months, maybe it doesn't, but we should enjoy it when it's happening now and take it as a positive rather than worrying about what's going to happen.
And I mean, there's a real chance of a Grand Slam, doesn't it? We still care about that, don't we? I think.
Hopefully.
I would hope so.
I was glad to hear that Sexton, when he said there's nothing won, included winning a championship and a Grand Slam as part of it, not just the World Cup or bust.
England and France coming to Dublin. Wales shipped 55 against New Zealand. They're not in great shape at the moment. So, I mean, I would think in the short term that's a real Philip. Damien Willemse, God love him, he's a lot of good things, not a kicker.
No.
He really isn't a kicker.
That was
too
good a game for a player.
I know.
Playing that. And I was going to say of that calibre, that's not fair on him, but I think of playing to that standard on the day, it was too good a game for a player like that. It'll be remembered, unfortunately.
Yeah. We will talk to Jerry and Andy. That's on the way after 8 o'clock. Pat and Evan with us after 9. Matt Slater is going to join us in this Liverpool story, which has obviously been doing the rounds all afternoon. FSG have released a statement which doesn't really clear up much, so we'll come to that this hour.
When's the Villa hour?
The Aston Villa hour. That was yesterday. Richie, Brian Kerr brought it to you. What did you and Brian Kerr do? What did you and Brian Kerr do, Richie, during the other 70 minutes where you weren't able to broadcast the game?
We might have been watching the game on the stream.
Okay.
I can't either confirm or deny that.
Okay.
But yeah, that
moaning,
was obviously a couple of minutes behind. But yeah,
giving out.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. There was a lot of moaning. I was getting a lot of insight as well from Brian too. Just of stuff that you can't necessarily broadcast. But yeah, it was. There are worse ways to spend a Sunday afternoon than next to Brian Kerr when you're not behind a live microphone.
Fair enough.
That way.
Okay. We should start the Newsround. It's brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mow. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. No surprise really. I mean, and there was a cruel irony that Conor Murray, in making that rare, I guess increasingly rare, but brilliant, incisive burst, pulled a groin, and you don't come back from that inside a November window.
No, we don't. And that groin injury has ruled Conor Murray out of the remainder of Ireland's autumn series. The Munster scrum half was withdrawn 6 minutes before the break in Saturday's win over the Springboks. In better news, Robbie Henshaw missed that game with a hamstring injury, but he is back in the fold for the Fiji test. And Stuart McCloskey's arm injury is not as bad as first feared, and he too will train this week. Captain Jonathan Sexton is nursing a dead leg. Kieran Frawley, meanwhile, picked up a twisted knee in that defeat to the All Blacks 15, and he too will return to Leinster to have that treated. And the IRFU confirmed today that the Ireland team will be based in Tours for next year's World Cup pool stage. Ireland's pool games take place in Nantes, Bordeaux and Paris. That's kind of a fulcrum position for them for the tournament.
In Tours? So is this industrial estate in the outskirts of some big city, or what do we know about this?
I was having a flick around the old Google images of Tours earlier on, Joe. Lovely spot in the Loire Valley. Nice little places in around the city itself. You're within range of all those places. Nantes, I think, is probably the closest of the three that they'll be going to. And then you got Bordeaux, and Paris is up to the north. But it's nice. It's very quaint in parts. I'm sure it has all the facilities that they're looking for in terms of training and all that kind of jazz. So I don't think they're going to be too bored. But yeah, it's one of these. Like it's an annoying World Cup thing where they're based out of one place and then every single match they have to dart somewhere else. So they'll probably spend half the time elsewhere.
Okay. Just looking at it here, Tours. So yeah, as you said, level with Nantes. So I'd say between Nantes and Paris on the west coast.
This is great.
A good bit in from the west.
The French geography hour here on Off the Ball.
Well, it's such a big conversation after 07. Imagine they went back to the exact same hotel just for the sheer.
They should go to Saipan.
Mischief. Well, indeed. So rugby on the way after 8 o'clock. Matt Slater with us then. Are Liverpool for sale or are they not for sale?
In part, yes. Fenway Sports Group say they will consider new shareholders amid reports that they have put Liverpool up for sale. The Athletic today say Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley have been retained to assist with that sale, with a full sales presentation produced for interested parties. FSG bought Liverpool back in 2010 and say they'll consider fresh investment if it is in the team's best interest. They say they remain committed to the success of the club.
So that statement really didn't clear very much up. Certainly didn't say they weren't for sale or looking for new shareholders, but equally didn't say they very much were for sale. FSG, they bought Liverpool for 300 million. The sense is now, if you're going by the Forbes valuation, is that Liverpool worth 4.5 billion. So John Henry and FSG are going to do quite well out of this one, it's fair to say.
But we always have to remember that this was bought to do this. It's not a secret that they're an investment group.
Yeah.
You know, they flip assets for a living. That's how they made their money. Maybe they're possibly a little bit more sentimental about their sports teams, and they still have the Red Sox all these years later. Yeah. But you know, it's in their nature, and this is the perfect time to do it. The Premier League's never going to be hotter. Liverpool have been an incredible brand over the last couple of years as well. Don't forget that. You know.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting questions is it that football is never going to be hotter and the market has peaked, or is it that Liverpool will never be hotter? I just think akin to, I don't know, property, that football clubs in 20 years, 10 years just have to be worth it more. It's just been the direction of travel for so long.
There's a confluence of factors here, whereas I think Liverpool, in a necessity to be able to compete or to be still competing in 10 years' time, do need fresh investment, whether that is facilitated by a full-scale sale or whether it's taking on board people who have deeper pockets than John W. Henry and co., because this is something that's obviously cropped up, and Jurgen Klopp's made a point of it, that there's only 3 teams really in world football that can compete without limits, and they're all owned by petrostates. They are going to require investment on that scale if they're going to compete on a sustained level with Paris Saint-Germain, with Manchester City, with Newcastle, even if they happen to take that direction upwards.
Yeah, I do wonder that as well.
And it's now or never, you know.
Yeah, maybe, because they've boxed so clever and invested so well in transfers. They almost would be entitled to sit down and say, we actually couldn't have done a better job in this. Even the Coutinho sale and the way we spent that money on various players, we couldn't have done better, and we ended up still short last year of where we needed to be.
Yeah, because you can't make mistakes either.
You
know what I mean? It's you make it. If Núñez turns out to be a big mistake, that's going to cost them massively. If Jack Grealish turns out to be a massive mistake, Man City aren't in any way affected.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
And they have preferred to spend their money on infrastructure, which will obviously help with any sale. So 110 million sterling on the new stand, the main stand. They have another 80 million being spent on the Anfield Road stand. That's going to be finished next summer. So that will bring capacity Anfield to 61,000. And they spent 50 million not on some new player, but on a new training facility in the Kirby district of the city. So they moved from Melwood. This is what they've spent the big bucks on. So Matt Slater's going to join us.
Yeah, it was a non-denial denial, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was no denial in it, but it also didn't say they were up for sale. And maybe they are looking for investment rather than outright sale. But you would have to think that if they're inviting offers, then they will certainly get some for outright takeover. And I can't see, if the offer is right, them turning it down with this out in the public now.
Petrostate left that doesn't own a club? Anyone left?
I don't know.
There's a China left.
Texas?
China, yeah, I was thinking Chinese money could be tempting.
I think Liverpool fans will have I think there'll be a lot of concern, because even though they need that extra bit of money, I think what they've had with FSG has been stability, good infrastructure, well run. They've got the most out of what they could get out of them, and they've done it in a way that has been, I don't know, it hasn't left a bad taste in the mouth. And I think that Liverpool Football Club and their fans have a very complicated relationship, and I think if it goes to that sort of Man City Newcastle model, I think there could be serious trouble. No matter, even though it would propel them, I think it would divide fans. I don't think everybody would be on the same page.
Yeah,
but it could propel them into a new stratosphere. But I think there would be serious backlash to it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard to stop it once the wheels are in motion. I wonder as well if John Henry having to grovel after the European Super League fallout.
People are saying that.
That would linger in a billionaire's mind, having to do that. So Matt Slater's going to join us this hour, and he's been digging into the story. He's really good on the finances of football. Meanwhile, Champions League draw.
Yeah, and Liverpool, funnily enough, will meet Real Madrid in the last 16 of the Champions League this season, following this morning's draw. The sides also met course in last season's final in Paris. The first leg will be at Anfield in February. Elsewhere, Manchester City were paired with RB Leipzig. Chelsea will be away to Borussia Dortmund in their first leg, and also Tottenham on the road in their first leg. They'll go to Italian champions AC Milan. Meanwhile, Manchester United will face Barcelona in the Europa League's knockout playoff round. That's for a place in the last 16.
Liverpool, a perfect club to buy, no doubt. One of the best managers in the world. Renovated stadium, new training grounds, squad with a lot of quality that needs around 300 million worth of investment in the new year to be back at the top. Very attractive prospect for a new right buyer, says Dean in Dublin 24. It's almost as if FSG ran the club with a view to selling the team.
Would you say Todd Bowley is looking at this going, oh, why didn't I wait a year?
Yeah. So, rugby nearly impossible to watch at the stadium, says Con in Limerick. Game took 2 hours every time there was a stoppage. Loads of people went off to get beers. Takes from the atmosphere, very annoying, very different to GA games where fewer stoppages and crowd much more engaged. I mean, I wasn't there, Con, on Saturday. The atmosphere seemed incredible, and I do take your point about the game taking 2 hours. The first half took, I think, 56, 57 minutes, but it was maybe absorbing enough fare on offer to withstand being 56 minutes. A dull URC game has no right to go that long and can't hope to keep our attention. But I did feel like the crowd were pretty much in the game the whole time on Saturday. You weren't at it, were you?
No, I wasn't at it, but certainly at home it did feel that way. And I think that 5:30 on a Saturday in this time of year is a brilliant time. It was also it was an okay evening. It wasn't cold. It wasn't raining. And I think for that reason I would agree. But I also think that the texter has a real point there about the general way things are done in the stadium. You know what I mean? You can't hear the referee. That mad music that they've decided to bring in now in between stoppages of play, which is I think a bad idea that affects atmosphere. And the general people getting up and down. Jerry Thornley's been talking about it for a year nearly on the show, and I couldn't agree with him more. I hate of all the sport to be at live, rugby annoys me the most, because honestly you're up and down out of your seat every 5 minutes. There's people just going for their 4 pints in a thing and they're up and down, and 50% of them aren't watching the matches. It's not as bad at Ireland matches as it is at maybe Leinster games when they're in the Aviva as opposed to the RDS, but it's still pretty bad. It is. And I look, Jerry did a piece in the Irish Times during the week about how basically with saying that this wasn't going to change, that they weren't planning on stopping bring drink to your seats and sale of it during the halves, during first half and second half, but it really has to, because it drives you mad at a game. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but it really is too much.
Well, I think funny, Jerry's writing about it again tomorrow actually, so curious to see what he made of the efforts with the music, and we might talk about it on a slight tangent tomorrow. Maybe that's a good topic.
Except we don't have a slight tangent tomorrow because no, we're usurped for Ireland's best ever rugby player.
O'Driscoll's knocking a slight tangent off here.
Well, I mean, unless you want to,
disgrace.
Look, I mean, we can rearrange things if you want, and tell Brian he's cut.
Well, no, we better not do that. Okay,
so that we can talk about
let's cut Ireland's greatest rugby player and brilliant analyst for us to talk about the atmosphere at the game instead of getting his thoughts on the game. It might be a bit indulgent. So that's Champions League. What else, Rich?
Shelbourne completed a League and Cup double yesterday. Jesse Stapleton and Pearl Slattery scored the goals in their 2-0 win over Athlone in the Women's FAI Cup final at Tallaght Stadium. Meanwhile, Harriet Scott and Saoirse Noonan have been added to the Republic of Ireland training squad in Spain. That's ahead of a friendly with Morocco.
Now, Porky Queeve has been sold out for some time for this game on Thursday night. We have the South African team.
Yeah, Jason Jenkins is going to face his former province on Thursday night. The Leinster lock has been named in the Springbok A team. That will play at Porky Queeve. Joining him in the pack is another former Munster player in Thomas Dutoy. And Mozandle Stick is in charge of Thursday's game for the Box, and was asked about Jenkins' form for Leinster this season that has earned him an international recall.
The last time I've worked with him, it was in 2018, where he made his debut for the Springboks, and then you have seen the growth in his game already, how he also conducts himself around like Johan mentioned, there's a lot of youngsters, but he's already taking that leadership role in our team. To look at the guys that we've got, that's one thing that I must be honest and say, as a coach, I'm privileged to have those experienced guys in our squad. You saw in the total of 14 Springboks in that team, the good balance of you having Herschel, who's been there for us with the Springboks, Goose at 10, and then Cornell, coming back, that will also allow those youngsters, to have their freedom, because of these are the guys that will probably manage the game and drive us, and that will also free those X-factor players on the outside. We know one thing for sure, the game is going to be tough and physical. So, but once again, and also the fact that Jason knows the conditions very well and he knows Munster very well, I think he's going to be massive in our system, and I'm also looking forward to the partnership he's got with the one okay next to him.
Munster named their team on the Wednesday. Rassie Erasmus won't be at Porky Queeve. It's been confirmed he's going to be preparing for France, which is fair enough.
Sounds like more his job, but
yeah,
there's something sentimental about that. That's a pity, but
yeah, I think the sense was almost he was coming for a kind of a victory lap almost, or a thank you or whatever. But yeah, obviously France.
What do you think of Rassie putting out the video again? We haven't talked about that yet.
Oh, shocking!
It's really poor, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there's something fair. I wonder, does he realise how nefarious it is to go and put of referee mistakes that I think are massively disputed, by the way, but he's declaring the mistakes and setting the wolves on a guy. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't happen to coaches or players. I give out about referees as much as anybody. I'm not saying that, but this is like a coach of one of the teams putting out an edited video.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's really poor, and these weren't shocking mistakes. They were, I would say, the routine mistakes that will be made over the course of an 80-minute game that's that intense. South Africa can get themselves lucky. They kept 15 men on the pitch. Colby probably should have been red carded. The aspect is that Erasmus has gone public here. So last summer, it wasn't his fault. He didn't want it to go public, but he saw the effect that it had on the referees, and they talked about their mental health and the pressure they were under. And you would think, well, that would have been noted, but here we are. Just over 12 months later, and he's taking the time, you've got better things to be doing.
Yeah.
Taking the time to, one, set the mob, which is what Twitter is in these circumstances, set the mob on that referee, and two, and it's fairly transparent, you are putting pressure on every referee for all future South African games. That I'm liable to do this.
The thing is, on top of it as well, adding to the kind of, it's unnecessary. It's like, I was listening to Dion Davids. He was doing the press conference today ahead of the France game, part of the Springbok coaching staff, and he was asked about the refereeing for Saturday's game, and they basically said that, in line with all games, that they do consult with the officials after the match just to have a sense of what we did right, what we did wrong, what we need to work on from here on in. So if they're already consulting privately with match officials, then this just shows how completely unnecessary and unwarranted and ugly it is to, like you say, set them up on a match official when you've already spoken to him. I'm pretty sure you've already spoken to him privately about the matter. To go public then afterwards and then sick the hounds on him is really disgusting, and something that World Rugby needs. It's not as if he should have learned from the last time, because the guy was banned up until the Japan test recently for them. He should have more cop on at this stage than to go live with that stuff.
And there's no problem with talking to the referee privately or talking to World Rugby privately. I mean, the video, which again he says he had no part in leaking, that was just for World Rugby, and that's customary. Lots of the coaching tickets would do that. There was actually nothing that odd about his video. I mean, it was talked about as this deranged kind of 60 minutes, but actually that, I would say he's probably done that after more South African games than not. It's the public nature of it that was the problem, and so to go public here in your first match back in the coaching box.
Suspension, I thought that I'll convinced that wasn't forward, by the way. I do think Dan Sheehan purposely put his foot in. Now, he was being neck rolled at the time, so it's a penalty both ways, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way. I think the referee missed something there one way or another, but I'm convinced that pass wasn't forward.
Yeah.
Beadham puts his arm out for it. He's in line with where the ball's going. The pass wasn't meant for him, so therefore it wasn't going forward. Am I wrong? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'm moving on from the Erasmus thing. I mean, I completely agree. I'm just saying as a point of like that was an obvious miss. South Africans were going mad about this, like they just calling it American football and everything like that when you were on Twitter during the game. Yeah. I just think that if you look at it, I don't think it was. Look, I could be wrong. I could be definitely looking at it through biased eyes.
I would say in doing this job and even looking at our social channels, and you see the correspondence from South African fans, and I think that's like 1 or 2% of South African fans. They are an aggressive fan base, and I don't think Rassie Erasmus is unaware of that. And
no, I agree with you.
He's harnessing.
Yeah, that's kind of why I asked the question in the first place, because I did feel that there was an element to setting the Wolves
big time
on, and that's
an inexperienced referee.
Yeah, exactly. And from a as well, I don't think it should be
Georgian.
I don't think it should be overlooked that it was a Georgian referee either. In that, like, that's important for the game to grow, not just in playing but in officials as well. Like,
Rich, we probably, just before we finish, we should pay tribute to Paul McNaughton.
Yeah, the IRFU leading the tributes today to the former Ireland international and team manager Paul McNaughton, who's died at the age of 69. A member of the Leinster Hall of Fame since 2018, he also played senior Gaelic football for his native county Wicklow, as well as soccer with both Shelbourne and Bray Wanderers.
Yeah, no, Andy Dunn knew Paul, and Jerry Thornley wrote about him as well, so we'll touch on this on Rugby after 8 o'clock. But an extraordinary sporting career, both as a player and then administrator. I mean, he was on the EPCR board, director, chairman. He was part of Declan Kidney's setup. He was Irish team manager, big part of the infrastructure behind the scenes at Leinster. And then one of the lines which jumped out to me is that, as Richie said, he played rugby for Leinster and Ireland, played soccer for Shelbourne, Bray Wanderers, he played for the Wicklow senior footballers. So he played all 3 sports at Lansdowne Road, at Dalymount Park and at Croke Park in the same season, in the same month. That's talent.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Jason Sherlock, eat your heart out.
I know. So very sad passing, I'm sure, for all concerned, and condolences. We will wrap things up, fellas. Richie, thank you very much.
Nice one, lads.
Michael, thank you.
Cheers.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
So, Maria McGoldrick